Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I almost heard a Freudian slip, I think, come from the other side of the House. I almost heard Primary Growth Partnership spoken quite positively about, but I think we'll let you away with it. It is early in the night, though. Look, it is a pleasure to speak on this New Zealand Horticultural Export Authority Amendment Bill, which has been alluded to earlier, amends the Act of the same name, which was passed in '87. There are, in fact, 11 fruits that are able to come under the Act, but boysenberry exporters and nashi pear exporters have elected not to take up their right under this Act or to operate under the Act at this moment. And it is important we get the flexibility that exporters need to be able to operate to the fullest advantage, and this bill will allow that to happen. And the premiums for our fruit are really very real and demonstrated, I think, by the exports, which grew from $50 million in 1998 to $300 million in 2015. And that shows the effectiveness of the Act. And that's a 500% increase, Mr Speaker. And for those who might think that CPI would have played a part somewhere, well, it did, but it was only 84% increase. So that's a magnificent increase in value for fruit exporters. Avocado exports earned almost a four-fold increase from $28.9 million in 2005 to $115 million. And I think summer fruit, which most people don't think a lot about and was alluded to by my colleague Ian McKelvey earlier, there was a very good summer fruit orchard in Marlborough. In fact, it did a great job, but unfortunately that's now in grapes. But I think one of the things I'd like to focus on this evening is the voting mechanism that is called into play for this to come for an order to be taken up by an industry. And I think the meat industry has been mentioned twice across the other side of the House, saying it should be brought to bear in that industry. But you still have to get 60% of the producers to actually agree before you can get an order. The Minister can't proceed an order in Council without that, and without 60% of the production votes also going in favour of it. And that's quite a significant task. And I know from going through that myself several times with a commodity levy orders, twice in fact, that it is quite a task to get people across the line. I think there'd be a significant challenge trying to get the meat industry to get across the line to do that. But anyway, that's by the by. I think what they're after is a single desk seller, and that's really another kettle of fish altogether. And I think there's far more to be gained by niche marketing, and that can be affected quite adequately as it is now in that particular industry. But nimble industries do need flexible legislation. This legislation actually gives us, this amendment bill will give us that. It's right that we need 60% of the production as well as 60% of the producers to vote in favour of this, because it is very important that the scale operators also have a say in what goes on, as well as not just being the small operators. It's also taken over a 2-year average, and I think that's really important because there is an agricultural risk in growing fruit, as with most agricultural crops. That's what's called an agricultural risk. And you could be a number of operators that could miss out through a frost or some other significant weather event and not be able to partake in the vote in a particular year, and that wouldn't be fair on anyone's books, I don't believe. So, Mr Speaker, it also allows exit provisions as well for product groups, and it sets out mandatory considerations for the Minister must take into account before he signs an order in Council. So again, I think that's just tidying up around the edges. It was a good act, but it wasn't quite fit for purpose. After this bill has gone through the process, it will actually make it a much better environment for exporters to operate in. And Mr Speaker, with that, I'd like to commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Cool.